I stared at the charge on my credit card, trying to make sense of it. $1,500. My stomach dropped. I hadn't expected it to be anything near that amount. Sure, we had a good time on the family trip, but this was a slap in the face. No one had said anything about a charge this big, not even a hint that it was coming. I pulled up the email receipt again, double-checking. There it was, under miscellaneous expenses. "Hey," I called out, walking into the kitchen where Tessa was rummaging through the fridge. "Did you see this charge?" She barely glanced up, casually sipping on a bottle of water. "Yeah, that's for the whole family. You know, for everything we did." I blinked, still holding the card up. "But this wasn't mentioned. This is way more than what we talked about. Shouldn't I have been told beforehand?" "It's fine," she waved it off, brushing me off as if I was overreacting. "We all benefited, right? It's not that much." My patience, already thin, snapped. But I kept my voice level. "Tessa, I didn't agree to pay for everything, and I don't appreciate being blindsided with a bill like this." She rolled her eyes. "You're making this way bigger than it needs to be. Chill." I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I bit down on it. This wasn't new. This was the same shit, just on a bigger scale. A flashback hit me like a punch in the gut. The time I covered her phone bill because it was an emergency, and then never saw a cent of it back. Or the time I loaned her money for her car repairs and got nothing in return. She always had an excuse, a reason why it was okay for her to take advantage of me. I didn't know why I kept letting it happen. I set the card down on the counter. I had two choices: let it go, like I always did, or actually do something about it. No more letting it slide. I wasn't going to get taken for granted again. My heart pounded as I thought about the bigger picture. There had to be a limit. And today, I was drawing one. I let the card sit on the counter for a minute, my mind spinning. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much had been tacked onto this trip. It was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway, just the family, a few days in the mountains, nothing crazy. But Tessa had a way of making everything seem like it needed to be bigger, better, more expensive. I remembered her excited voice on the phone when she'd booked the place. "It'll be perfect. We'll have a nice, cozy place, and I'll book a fancy dinner for everyone." And I thought it'd be fun to do a guided tour of the area. You know, for the family experience. "Yeah, sounds good," I'd said, not thinking much of it at the time. I figured dinner was going to be a few $100, a little splurge, nothing to get worked up over. But then she'd added the spa package, and the guide, and a couple of extra activities I wasn't aware of. The cost had started piling up quickly. At first, I thought she'd just cover it. But then she turned to me with those wide, pleading eyes of hers. "Can you front the cost for now? I'll send you the money when we get back, I promise." I had agreed, like I always did, thinking she'd come through. After all, she was my sister. I just asked for the money once everything settled down, but here we were, with a charge that was almost double what I'd expected. I remembered the group chat from the days after the trip. Everyone had been sharing pictures, talking about how much fun they'd had, joking about the tour guide's weird obsession with birds. Not once did anyone bring up the money. Tessa hadn't said a word, not even a "thanks for covering that." Everyone just acted like nothing was out of the ordinary, like it was just another trip. I kept scrolling through the messages, hoping someone would bring it up. But no. It was as if they were all just waiting for me to say something. I wasn't going to be the one to stir the pot. Not yet, anyway. I couldn't just confront her about this, at least not right now. That would only make it worse. I knew how this played out. Tessa would get defensive, maybe start crying, and turn it into this whole thing where I was the bad guy for not being family-oriented. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into backing down this time. I took a deep breath and pulled out my laptop. I had to handle this systematically, unemotionally. I opened a new spreadsheet. This was going to take time, but I was done letting her take advantage of me. I typed out a column for each charge: fancy dinner, tour guide, spa package, unexpected activities. Each one had a corresponding amount, neatly laid out. When I was done, the numbers stared back at me. This was the price of the family experience. I added a column for who owed what. Tessa's name was in every single one. I stared at it for a moment, letting the weight of it settle. She thought she could get away with this, like she always did. I'd let her slide for so long because I hated conflict. I hated the drama, but this time I was done. I had the facts now, and I was going to be calm about it. No more arguing, no more playing into her guilt trips. I saved the file and closed the laptop. My heart was still pounding, but now there was a sense of purpose behind it. I wasn't just going to wait for her to pay me back. I was going to make sure she did. And if that didn't work, well, there were other ways to make her face up to this. I sat back in my chair, staring at the spreadsheet again. The numbers were solid. They didn't lie. But as much as I wanted to focus on getting that money back, something gnawed at me. This wasn't just about the trip. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about everything. Every time Tessa had pulled this shit with me, I'd let it go for too long. I leaned forward, rubbing my temples. My mind was running through the history, like a reel I couldn't stop. There was the time she'd borrowed $800 for a last-minute emergency. Her car had supposedly broken down, but she never had the money to pay for the repairs. I'd sent her the cash, thinking I'd get it back, but I didn't. 6 months later, she said the repairs had been more than expected, and could I just cover it this one last time? I'd said yes again, even though I was getting pissed off. I never saw that $800 either. Then there was the time she ruined my weekend plans because she forgot she'd promised to take care of her kids. I'd made arrangements for us to go to a concert, something I'd been looking forward to for months. But at the last minute, she'd called, asking if I could help out because her sitter bailed. I didn't say no. I rearranged everything. I missed the concert. She'd apologized in that soft, guilty way she did, but it never felt sincere. More like a way to manipulate me into feeling bad for being upset. I exhaled sharply, remembering each incident, each time I let it slide. It was always family with her, always some excuse about how I should just help her because we were family. The problem was, she never seemed to pay me back, never seemed to acknowledge that I was doing more than my share. I looked at the folder on my desk, the one I'd started putting together last night, a stack of receipts, bank statements, and all the documents I'd dug up from the last few years. I had proof. I had every detail she couldn't wiggle out of. I didn't want to go down the legal route. I didn't want to escalate it, but I was tired of being the one who had to take the hit every time. Tired of the pattern. I pulled out my phone and dialed the lawyer I'd found after some quick research. I didn't hesitate when the call went through. "Hello, this is Allison. How can I help you?" "Hi, Allison. I need to set up a meeting. It's about a financial dispute with my sister." "Of course. Could you give me some details?" I hesitated for a second, but then I just started talking. I explained the situation, the charges, the past incidents, how I'd been taken advantage of for years. By the time I finished, my hand was shaking. It felt like I was talking about someone else, but I wasn't. This was me, and I was done. She was quiet for a moment. "I understand. Let's get this sorted. I can meet with you tomorrow to go over everything." "Perfect. I'll bring the documents." After hanging up, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The decision was made. I wasn't going to play nice anymore. I wasn't going to let her use me for her convenience and get away with it. I stared at the folder again, feeling its weight. It was thick, maybe too thick. But it was everything I needed to make sure Tessa couldn't talk her way out of this. I got up and walked over to the kitchen counter. My fingers brushed the handle of the folder, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had control of something. Tomorrow, I'd take the first step. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the folder in front of me, when my phone rang. It was Tessa. I almost didn't pick it up. I was already prepared for her to brush off everything that had happened, to downplay the charge like it was no big deal. But I had to take this call. It was time. I answered. Hey, sis." She sounded too cheerful, like she didn't have a care in the world. "Just wanted to check in. Hope you're doing well." I swallowed down the irritation that bubbled up. "I'm fine. How about you?" Good. She paused, like she was trying to decide how to ease into it. "So about that credit card charge, did you get that squared away? I know it looked like a lot, but we all benefited, right?" I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my voice steady. "Yeah, I saw it. A little more than I expected." "Yeah, it's fine," she said, brushing it off. "It was for the whole family. You know how it is. We all pitched in, right? It's not like you're out of pocket. It was all for the experience." "Right," I said, my teeth clenched. But I forced myself to sound calm. I've been thinking about it and I don't know. I'm not sure I'm comfortable just letting this slide. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then she laughed. What? Oh, come on, you're being dramatic. It's not a big deal. It's family. Don't make this harder than it is. Maybe, I said, lowering my voice just enough for her to hear the hint of warning in it. But there are bigger consequences if this doesn't get handled properly. She paused again, this time a little longer. What are you talking about? I leaned back, feeling the weight of the folder in front of me. You know, sometimes things don't work out the way we plan. If I don't get reimbursed for this, I might have to take a different approach. You wouldn't want me to go down that road. There was a beat of silence. Then she scoffed, clearly not taking me seriously. Oh, please, stop being so dramatic. It's just a charge. We're family. You know I'll pay you back. Just give it time. You said that last time, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And the time before that. You're really gonna make this a thing, she said, her voice sharp now. You're gonna pull the family card on me over some money. I didn't let her push me. You're the one who made it a thing, Tessa. I'm just trying to make sure you follow through on your promises. There was a long pause. I could feel the tension building on the other end. Finally, she muttered, You're being ridiculous. We'll talk about it later. The click of the phone was louder than I expected. She'd hung up without another word. I stared at the screen for a second, still trying to steady my breath. I hadn't expected her to react like that, but I wasn't surprised either. Tessa always made it seem like I was the problem when she was the one who took advantage. I took a deep breath and turned to the folder on the table. It was thick now, heavy with receipts, emails, and statements. Everything I needed to back up what I was saying. The call had shaken me a little, but it had also made me more resolute. I wasn't backing down. I wasn't going to keep playing the fool. Tessa could laugh it off now, but she'd have to face what was coming. I opened the folder and started flipping through the documents. I could feel my pulse slowing as I ran my fingers over the paper. This was the moment. I wasn't just asking for my money back. I was drawing a line. No more pretending like I didn't matter. No more letting her guilt trip me into letting things slide. I grabbed my phone again and dialed the lawyer, setting up our meeting for tomorrow. This was happening, and nothing was going to stop it. I arrived at my parents' house, the folder still tucked under my arm. The scent of garlic and something sweet hit me as soon as I opened the door. It was typical for a family gathering. They were cooking, and Tessa had likely arranged it all, another one of her casual get-togethers. Except I knew what was coming. She was too wound up, too eager. I had a feeling she was planning to drop something big, something she thought would make me feel guilty or make me back down. The house was quiet, save for the sound of my dad's voice from the kitchen and the soft clink of silverware. I moved toward the living room, set the folder down on the coffee table, and sat down on the couch, keeping my back straight, my expression neutral. Tessa breezed in a few moments later, her usual energy filling the room. She was talking a mile a minute, hands flailing around as she went on and on about a new project she was working on. Her latest endeavor, some wellness retreat she was trying to develop, was obviously the topic of the night. Guys, I've been looking into this space. It's amazing, perfect for the whole family. You know, yoga, meditation, nature walks. It's exactly what we need. It's gonna be huge, I swear, she said, eyes wide with excitement. And once it's up and running, I think it could bring in a ton of income. Imagine all of us getting to work on something like this together. I didn't say anything. I didn't even acknowledge it. I just stared at the folder, the weight of everything I'd been holding in for weeks pressing against my chest. She couldn't see it. She had no idea that the storm was already brewing. She was too busy with her latest big idea to even consider what was about to hit her. I sat in silence, listening to her talk, the sound of her voice grating against the steady thrum of tension building in my gut. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it quickly, my pulse quickening when I saw the name. Allison. She was here. I glanced toward the door, my heart thudded in my chest, each second dragging. Every footstep down the hall felt like it was echoing in my ears. Tessa was still rambling on, oblivious to the fact that this casual family gathering was about to take a very different turn. The doorbell rang. I didn't look up. I heard the shuffle of feet, my dad's voice greeting someone. Then came the faint murmur of a deep voice, my lawyer. A moment later, the door opened again, and Allison stepped into the room. She was calm, professional, and carrying the weight of something far more official than anything Tessa had planned for tonight. She glanced around the room, her eyes landing on me before turning toward Tessa, who was still mid-sentence, her hands still flying. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Allison said, her voice smooth but firm, "but I believe I have something for you." Tessa froze, her mouth snapping shut as she turned to face the lawyer, confusion flickering in her eyes. Allison stepped forward and handed her a legal notice. "This is for you, Tessa. It's a formal legal notice regarding financial disputes." I could feel the air in the room shift, a hush falling over everything. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I kept my eyes on Tessa as she looked down at the envelope, her fingers trembling for a split second before she snapped it open. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, tearing the letter from the envelope, her eyes scanning the contents rapidly, the color drained from her face. I could hear the words coming out of her mouth, but they didn't register at first. She was reading the details, everything I'd documented, every receipt, every charge. I stayed still. This wasn't the time to say anything, not yet. Finally, she looked up, her face a mixture of shock and anger. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, throwing the papers onto the coffee table. This is bullshit." I didn't say anything. I let her fume, let the reality of what had just happened sink in. Her gaze shot to me, her voice rising. "You actually had a lawyer do this? Over some stupid credit card charge? Are you out of your mind?" I stood slowly, pushing my hand through my hair. "It's not just the charge, Tessa. It's the constant pattern, the borrowing, the never paying it back. And you've been using the family excuse for way too long." Her face twisted with a mix of frustration and disbelief. "So this is how it is now? You're going to drag the family through this? Over some petty shit?" I shook my head. "I'm not dragging anyone into anything. You made this decision when you started taking advantage of me, when you started thinking you could walk all over me." She stood up too, the anger radiating off her. "You don't get to treat me like this. You don't get to—" But before she could continue, my dad stepped in, his voice heavy with tension. "Enough, Tessa. Just enough." He looked from her to me, his disappointment obvious. I didn't care. Tessa had been getting away with this for too long. I wasn't backing down now. I turned to Allison, who was silently watching everything unfold. "Thanks for coming by. I think we're done here." Allison nodded and turned toward the door. As she left, I took a deep breath, watching Tessa fume in the center of the room. It wasn't over yet, but I had taken the first step. The moment the lawyer stepped out, the silence was thick. It felt like the air in the room had solidified, pressing down on everyone. Tessa stood there, still holding the papers, her mouth hanging open. I could see the shock creeping up on her face, followed quickly by anger, disbelief, and a whole lot of panic. She didn't speak for what felt like an eternity, just stared at the legal notice, her eyes darting from the paper to me and back again. I stayed calm, my posture steady, even as the tension in the room crackled. I wasn't going to flinch. This was the moment. "Are you seriously doing this?" she finally managed to choke out, voice shaking. I didn't answer right away. I let her stew in it for a moment. The family was watching, my dad, his face unreadable, leaning against the kitchen counter, arms folded. My mom stood behind him, her hands clasped in front of her, her gaze flicking between Tessa and me, like she wasn't sure whether to intervene or pretend this wasn't happening. Tessa looked at them, her face twisted in shock. "Are you really just going to sit there while she does this? How could you let her do this to me?" I glanced at my parents, then at Tessa. "It's not about what I did, Tessa. It's about what you keep doing." I paused, giving the room a moment to absorb it. Borrowing money, not paying it back. Taking advantage of me for years, and using the family excuse to justify it every single time. I've been patient with you for too long. I let you walk all over me, and I'm done with it. Her face turned red, the words scrambling in her head, but no real defense came out. She looked back at the papers, like maybe if she stared at them long enough, they'd magically disappear. But they weren't going anywhere. "Mom, Dad, tell her she's overreacting. Tell her this isn't necessary," Tessa pleaded, turning to them. My dad didn't respond immediately. He just shifted his weight, looking down at the floor. My mom looked like she was about to say something but hesitated, biting her lip. Finally, she spoke, but it wasn't the support I was hoping for. "You don't have to go this far," she said, her voice soft but tinged with disappointment. "We're family. This is supposed to be something we handle together, not like this." I didn't even flinch at her tone. "It's been together for years, Mom, and nothing's changed. This isn't about the money anymore. It's about respect. I've been patient, I've been kind, and nothing's worked. So now I'm handling it my way." Tessa snapped her attention back to me, her face flushed with fury. "You think this is about respect? You're betraying me. You're betraying the family." I shook my head slowly, making sure she could hear every word. "No, you're betraying me, and everyone else who's had to cover for you, and let you get away with this for far too long." She stepped forward, fists clenched, but I didn't move. "You're a traitor. This is how you treat your own sister? After everything I've done for you? I've helped you, I've supported you, and this is how you repay me?" Her voice cracked on the last part, but I didn't soften. "You've used me, Tessa. There's a difference. You keep thinking that because we're family, I'll just keep picking up the pieces. I'm done with that." Her eyes flashed with anger, and she opened her mouth to say something else, but then she stopped, her gaze dropping to the papers in her hands. It was like the words had evaporated, leaving her with nothing but the weight of the truth. I wasn't the one to blame here. The tension in the room stretched so tight, I thought it might snap. My mom's voice cut through the silence again, weak and uncertain. Can't we all just sit down and talk about this? Is this really how you want things to go?" I looked at her, then at my dad, whose face was still closed off, distant. It was the same as it always was, his way of avoiding conflict, of letting things play out until they blew over. But this time, I wasn't waiting for it to blow over. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mom. I'm done letting her walk all over me. I've tried to be the bigger person, but I'm not the one who keeps crossing the line." I took a step forward, keeping my voice steady but resolute. "This isn't about family anymore. It's about me taking control of my own life. And if Tessa can't respect that, then I'm done." Tessa's mouth worked soundlessly as she tried to find her words, but there was nothing left for her to say. She was backed into a corner, and the more she tried to fight, the more obvious it became that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything else. I wasn't looking for anyone's approval anymore. I wasn't going to be the scapegoat, not for her, not for anyone. I stood there, waiting for whatever was coming next. But no matter what happened, I knew I'd made the right choice. Tessa's breathing was heavy, her chest rising and falling as she glared at me, her eyes filled with that same old mixture of deflection and outrage. She took a step back, trying to regain some composure, but I could see her hands trembling. She opened her mouth, trying to spit out whatever excuse she could find. "You're just overreacting, as usual," she said, her voice sharp and high-pitched, trying to sound confident but failing. "I was just helping the family. I didn't ask for all this drama." I didn't flinch. Helping the family? By putting everything on my credit card and never paying me back? That's not helping, Tessa. That's taking advantage. Her face flushed red, the anger twisting into something else, panic. "You're making me out to be some kind of villain. You know I didn't mean for this to happen. It's just money. Why are you doing this to me?" I didn't let her guilt trip me. "It's not just about the money, and you know it. You've been doing this for years, borrowing money, getting me to pay for things, and never following through. And now you think this is just some family misunderstanding? It's not. I'm done." The room felt smaller, like it was closing in on me. My mom shifted uncomfortably, her hands still clasped, eyes darting between me and Tessa. Dad hadn't moved. He hadn't said a word since everything went down. He was just standing there, distant as always, like he couldn't be bothered to pick a side. "Maybe we should just let this go," Mom said, her voice hesitant, almost pleading. "It's not worth ruining the family over something like this." I shook my head slowly, keeping my gaze locked on Tessa. "You're the one who's ruined it, Mom. By letting her get away with everything, by acting like it's fine for her to walk all over me because we're family. This has been going on too long. I've tried to let it slide, but I'm not doing it anymore." Tessa scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, now you're the victim. You've always played the victim. Everything's always about you, isn't it?" Her voice dripped with venom, and I could feel my blood starting to boil, but I stayed calm. I had to stay calm. "You're the one who took advantage of me, Tessa," I said, my voice low but firm. "And I'm done being your backup. I've spent years letting you get away with this crap, but no more." My mom opened her mouth, probably about to say something like, "Can't we all just get along?" But I didn't wait for it. I reached down, pulled the folder from the table, and slid it in front of her. I opened it slowly, making sure everyone could see exactly what I'd been dealing with. There it was, the spreadsheet I'd made, all the receipts, the emails, every single detail. I placed it on the table in front of Tessa with a deliberate motion, watching as her eyes flicked to it, then snapped back to me. "Here's the truth, Tessa," I said, tapping the top of the folder. "All the things you've done, the money you've borrowed, the things you've convinced me to pay for. I've got it all right here. You don't get to manipulate me anymore. This isn't family. It's just you using me because you know I won't say no." Tessa's face contorted with frustration. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She couldn't find a response. She wasn't ready for this. She thought I'd just fold, like I always did. But I wasn't folding anymore. "This is insane," she muttered under her breath, shaking her head. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. I've done so much for you, and this is how you repay me?" I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter and sharp. "You've done so much for me? You've used me for years. You've borrowed money, ruined my plans, never paid anything back. And you think this is some big betrayal on my part?" I shook my head. "You don't get to act like the martyr here." She threw her hands up in the air, spinning away from me, her frustration boiling over. "I can't believe this. You're crazy. You're the one ruining this family. I didn't do anything wrong." I didn't raise my voice, didn't let the chaos of it all drown me out. "The only one ruining this family is you. You've been playing everyone, getting away with it for so long, and now it's over. You don't get to make me feel guilty about standing up for myself." Tessa's hands were shaking now, her eyes wild with anger and panic. But I wasn't backing down. This time, she wasn't going to gaslight me into thinking I was the one in the wrong. My dad finally spoke, his voice stiff. "Can't we just let this go? This isn't the way to handle it." "I'm not letting it go," I said, looking right at him. "Because every time I let it slide, it just gets worse. And if I let it slide now, she'll just keep doing it. We have to start facing the truth. This isn't a small issue anymore. She's been taking advantage of me, and I'm not doing it anymore." Tessa opened her mouth again, probably to launch into another round of insults or guilt, but I stopped her before she could. "Save it," I said, my voice cold. "We're done here." The room was still thick with tension, but I wasn't backing down. Tessa could yell, she could accuse me of whatever she wanted. But I wasn't the scapegoat anymore, not this time. The days after the family meeting felt like they were stretching on forever, but each one added more weight to the decision I had made. I filed the formal claim against Tessa. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but it was the only thing left. My lawyer, Allison, was meticulous. She didn't waste time with the back and forth. I sent everything to her: receipts, texts, bank statements, everything. This was going to court if it had to. Tessa's initial reaction was what I expected: denial, anger, and a whole lot of attempts to downplay it. Her first message to me after the papers were filed was a long, rambling text about how family should handle things privately and how she was totally willing to pay me back. But this was all just a misunderstanding. She even threw in some words about how this wasn't like me, trying to guilt-trip me again. But I wasn't buying it, not anymore. Allison wasn't interested in negotiating a quiet settlement. She wrote back with the facts, precise and cold. Every time Tessa tried to deflect. No more excuses, no more promises of, "I'll pay you back eventually." Tessa's attempts to act like she was the victim were getting weaker and weaker. She tried playing the "I can't believe you're doing this" card in front of our parents. She said I was ruining the family and making it all about money. But no matter how many times she spun the story, no one was buying it. The family started to fracture. My dad? He stayed distant, like always, not really willing to take a side. My mom, however, started acting like a shield for Tessa, saying things like, "Can't we just forget this? Why does it have to be so public?" She tried to keep the peace, but it wasn't the peace we needed. It was her trying to keep everything in the status quo, trying to cover for Tessa again. I didn't care anymore. This time, I wasn't backing down. Tessa started trying to repair her public image. She posted on social media about how grateful she was for her family, how much she loved them, and how she was working through a hard time because of misunderstandings. It was pathetic. It didn't take long for people to start seeing it for what it was: damage control. She was trying to get ahead of the inevitable fallout, pretending like everything was fine while behind closed doors, she was scrambling to fix her mess. I wasn't worried about what she posted online. I didn't care about her spin on things anymore. What I cared about was that she was being held accountable for once. The public humiliation was unfolding, and I didn't feel bad about it. I felt something closer to satisfaction, not because I wanted to see her hurt, but because it was the consequence of years of her taking advantage of me and everyone else who was too afraid to call her out. As the legal process unfolded, I could feel the tension getting worse. Some of the family sided with me, at least in private. They were tired of seeing Tessa use the same old tricks, but they didn't want to say it out loud. It wasn't about the money to them. It was about the manipulation, the guilt, the constant shifting of blame. A couple of my cousins even reached out to me, asking for the details and telling me they respected that I was finally standing up for myself. But most of the family stayed silent, pretending like they didn't see it. I wasn't surprised. It was easier to stay neutral, easier to pretend it wasn't happening, easier to just keep things quiet and let Tessa get away with it. But I wasn't going to stay quiet. Not anymore. Every time I thought about backing down, about somehow trying to smooth things over for the sake of family, I'd think back to all the times she'd made me feel small, all the times I let her get away with it because I didn't want to rock the boat. I wasn't that person anymore, and that quiet satisfaction only grew. As Tessa's attempts to make it all go away grew more desperate, I could see how it was starting to fall apart. The posts, the apologies, the fake concern, none of it mattered when the truth was staring people in the face. She couldn't spin it anymore. The truth had a way of cutting through all the bullshit. I wasn't the scapegoat. I wasn't the one who had been in the wrong all these years. Tessa could try to play the martyr, but I wasn't buying it. She could manipulate the rest of the family, but she wasn't going to manipulate me anymore. I felt the shift, the crack in the facade. She was losing control, and it was her own fault. I had done everything I could to handle it privately, to resolve it with her directly, but she wouldn't listen. Now it was out there, and there was no way for her to take it back. I wasn't going to stop until she faced the consequences. This time, I was making sure that the story ended on my terms. The weight had lifted. I was sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, the one I'd finally moved into after months of feeling like I was stuck in limbo. The sunlight filtered through the trees outside, casting long shadows over the quiet street below. It felt like the first time in years I could actually breathe. I hadn't realized how much the family drama had drained me until I left it all behind. Tessa's chaos, my parents' avoidance, it had all been a constant hum in the background of my life. But now I had my own space, a fresh start, and the peace I'd been craving for so long. The lawsuit was still in the air, hanging over all of us, but I didn't care about it anymore. The family was dealing with it, trying to pretend everything was okay, but I could feel the divide. Some people still called me dramatic. Some tried to pretend like it was all going to blow over, but it wasn't blowing over. And Tessa's reputation was already taking a hit. I'd seen a few whispered comments on social media and heard the gossip trickling through family channels. Her image was unraveling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Not this time. A week after everything had gone down, I got a text from Mark, Tessa's husband. I hadn't spoken to him since the family meeting. His message was brief, just an apology. I know things have been tense. I'm sorry you've been put in the middle of this. It's not fair, and I hope you're doing okay. It wasn't much, and I could tell he was just trying to smooth things over. But I wasn't in the mood for half-hearted gestures. I read the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, ready to type something back. But in the end, I didn't respond. What was there to say? He wasn't the one who'd used me, the one who'd manipulated me for years. I didn't owe him anything. I leaned back in my chair, letting the quiet settle in. This was what it felt like to be free. Free from guilt, free from the constant stress of being everyone's financial fallback, free from the weight of my family's expectations. The hardest part of it all was realizing how long I'd let them take advantage of me. I had always been the one who gave in, who kept the peace, who let things slide for the sake of family. But the truth was, I'd let myself get lost in it. I'd let their problems become mine, their issues become my responsibility. And I had paid for it. But now, standing firm, setting that boundary, it felt necessary. It was something I should have done a long time ago. I had spent so much time trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. I wasn't going to let myself be emotionally or financially drained anymore. I had a life of my own to live, and it wasn't about putting everyone else's needs ahead of mine anymore. I smiled, just a little, as I glanced around the apartment. It wasn't much, small, a little worn in, but it was mine. I had built this. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something that was just for me. That was the kind of peace I'd been searching for. Not from the family, not from Tessa, but from myself. And that was enough.